Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. These are the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But today, those words feel more relevant than ever. What happens when a system designed to protect us all is used against us? When the very rights that safeguard our freedom are violated? This is the story of Juan Cabrera, whose rights were violated in ways that should concern us all. Juan Cabrera's trial was not just flawed. It was a dangerous example of how easily the justice system can be compromised when those responsible for protecting our rights fail to act. In Juan's case, multiple violations occurred, each one stacking the deck against him, threatening the foundation of fair justice, not just for him, but for all of us. If we allow these violations to go unchecked, they will set a dangerous precedent that can impact anyone in the future. Let's start with one of the cornerstones of our justice system, an impartial jury. The Sixth Amendment guarantees every defendant the right to be judged by a jury of unbiased peers. But in Juan's case, this right was ignored. Several jurors admitted that they had close relationship with law enforcement or had seen media coverage of the case before the trial even began. For example, a juror mentioned knowing prosecutor Ron France as they both attended the same church. Another juror acknowledged that she knew Judge Juanita Bocanegra as they were both parents at the same school and had interacted socially, plus all the officers at school the juror knew. When asked if it would make them lean towards prosecution, she stated, "They don't know that." Plus, the same juror also golfed with another detective. Some jurors, like Juror Trevino, were related to Juan's mom's fiancé, but he never once met Juan or his mom, not once. Of course, the prosecution made sure to remove him. Others admitted they were inclined to trust police testimony over other witnesses. Another juror mentioned having seen some headlines about the case on social media, but couldn't recall reading detailed articles. Exposure to pre-trial media, even subconsciously, can taint a juror's impartiality, making it an area of concern for ensuring a fair trial. Another juror openly stated that they would likely lean toward believing a police officer over other witnesses. This predisposition can compromise impartiality, as jurors must weigh all testimonies equally. Yet, despite this clear bias, these jurors were allowed to stay on the panel. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a direct violation of Juan's Sixth Amendment right to an impartial jury. When jurors enter a trial with pre-existing biases, the fairness of the entire process is jeopardized. And if this can happen to Juan, it can happen to anyone. It's important to remember, our justice system relies on ordinary citizens serving as jurors, and they do their best to make fair decisions. They aren't expected to know all the intricacies of legal conflicts or connections, and they aren't at fault for any oversight. The responsibility for ensuring a fair and impartial jury lies with the professionals in the courtroom, the attorneys on both sides. For example, one juror mentioned knowing Judge Juanita Bocanegra. The juror and Bocanegra had interacted socially, and although this connection may seem minor, it's exactly the kind of relationship that could introduce subconscious bias. Chris Kessel, Joel and Haas, and even the judge should have dismissed them from the jury like they did with Juror Trevino. They did so because he knew Juan's stepdad, but he never met Juan nor knew of him. Makes you wonder? This was not a detail for the juror to catch. It was up to both the prosecutor and defense attorney, Chris Kessel, to recognize this potential bias and address it. yet it was overlooked. Both parties in the courtroom, those whose job it is to ensure fairness, knew about this connection, but no one took the necessary steps to ensure it wouldn't influence the trial. This isn't about blaming the juror. We're all human, and it's not the juror's job to know every conflict of interest that could affect a trial. But it is the job of the prosecutor and the defense to make sure these connections are fully examined and handled. When they fail to do this, it threatens the fairness of the entire process. In this case, they failed Juan, and they failed us all. The next violation: ineffective assistance of counsel. Juan's lawyer, Christopher Kessel, didn't challenge these biased jurors. He didn't fight to ensure Juan had a fair, impartial jury. Worse still, he admitted he wasn't fully prepared to argue critical points of law during the trial. This lack of preparation and failure to act is more than just poor performance. It's a violation of Juan's right to effective legal representation. Under the Sixth Amendment, every defendant deserves a defense that fights for them. But Juan didn't get that. His lawyer's failure left him vulnerable to a biased jury and a flawed trial. And here's the thing: when a defense attorney fails their client like this, it isn't just an isolated incident. It sets a dangerous precedent. If lawyers aren't held accountable, we could all face trials where our defenders are unprepared or unwilling to fight for our rights. Then there's the issue of witness credibility. In Juan's trial, the prosecution relied heavily on witnesses who were facing their own criminal charges. These witnesses had a lot to gain by testifying to the prosecutor's theory to get plea deals and reduce sentences. Both Palomares and Garcia were charged with SA, 15 years felony that they dropped to attempt SA, and both were only sentenced to 5 years probation. They were only supposed to get it if they gave truthful testimony. For both Palomares and Garcia, this was their second offense of SA. To this day, they continue to rack up charges, convictions, as they both have been in and out of jail. But the defense didn't push back. They didn't challenge these witnesses on the stand, even though it was clear they had reasons to lie. This isn't just about unreliable testimony. It's about due process, a right protected by the 14th Amendment. When witnesses can testify under these circumstances without being properly challenged, the truth becomes secondary to personal gain. Allowing testimony from incentivized witnesses without proper cross-examination is dangerous. This was just day one of Juan's trial.